Something about late nights makes everything feel different, and sometimes that feeling is justified. Story 1. The silence of the house was not empty. It was heavy, pressing against my eardrums like deep sea water. It was 3:17 a.m., that liminal hour when the world feels suspended, held together by nothing more than the thin, frayed thread of my own anxiety. I sat in the glow of my laptop, the screen a sickly pale rectangle in the dark living room. My eyes burned, but sleep had become a stranger. Every creak of the floorboards under the weight of the cooling house sounded like a deliberate footfall. I told myself it was just the architecture settling, a mechanical cough in the lungs of the building. But houses don't breathe with a rhythmic, wet rasp. I closed the laptop, plunging the room into a velvet, suffocating ink. The moonlight filtered through the blinds, casting long, skeletal shadows that seemed to reach for my ankles. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. From the kitchen, a sound broke the stillness, the deliberate clink of a teaspoon against a ceramic mug. I held my breath, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. We were supposed to be alone. My partner was away on business, and the doors had been dead-bolted before I'd turned in. The kitchen was empty, or it should have been. "Hello?" I whispered. My voice sounded thin, alien, and pathetically small. No answer. Only the silence returned, sharper than before. I stood, my legs feeling like leaden pillars. I needed to see. I didn't want to, but the compulsion was a physical ache, a magnetic pull toward the dark hallway. I crept forward, the hardwood floor biting into my bare soles. As I reached the threshold of the kitchen, I stopped. The mug was sitting on the counter, steam still rising in a lazy, ghostly swirl. The spoon lay discarded beside it. I scanned the room, my eyes straining, searching for a silhouette, a flicker of movement. There was nothing. Just the refrigerator humming its low mechanical drone. I let out a jagged, hysterical laugh. I had imagined it. Exhaustion was playing tricks on my mind. I turned to leave, but stopped cold. My reflection caught the light from the hallway, a pale, distorted smear in the kitchen window. I was staring at myself, but I wasn't alone. In the glass, standing directly behind me, was a figure. It was impossibly tall, draped in rags that seemed to soak up the moonlight, its face a smooth, featureless surface of pale, pulled skin. It wasn't reaching for me, it was simply waiting. I didn't turn around, I couldn't. I just watched it in the glass as it leaned closer, its head tilting at an angle no human neck could sustain. "Don't worry," a voice whispered, not in the room, but directly against the cartilage of my ear. It sounded like dry leaves skittering over a tombstone. "I'm just waiting for the kettle to whistle." And then, in the absolute silence, the stove clicked. Story 2. The silence of the house at 3:17 a.m. is not truly silent. It is a heavy, pressurized thing that hums against the eardrums, a static charge left behind by the dying day. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows of the tree branches outside dance like skeletal fingers against the plaster. I was thirsty. It's a mundane human requirement, but at this hour, it feels like a provocation. I pushed the duvet aside and stepped onto the hardwood. The floorboards didn't creak. They groaned, a long, weary sound that seemed to echo through the hallway like a warning. I kept my eyes fixed on the sliver of moonlight spilling from the kitchen window, moving through the dark with the muscle memory of a lifetime. When I reached the threshold of the kitchen, I froze. The air here was colder, biting, and metallic. My breath hitched, forming a faint, ghostly plume in the dark. I wasn't alone. Standing by the counter, with its back to me, was a figure. It was impossibly tall, its shoulders hunched in a way that defied skeletal alignment. It reached out a long, gray hand toward the dish drainer, its fingers twitching with a rhythmic, wet clicking sound. Click-tap, click-tap. I tried to swallow, but my throat had turned to sandpaper. The silence of the house had shifted. thickening into something viscous and suffocating. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I simply anchored myself to the spot, paralyzed by the primal certainty that if I made a sound, that thing would know. It stopped moving. The clicking ceased. For a moment, the silence was absolute, a void so deep I felt my heart might actually stop beating just to keep from violating the stillness. Then, the creature's head began to rotate. It didn't turn around. It pivoted slowly, sickeningly, until the neck seemed to twist a full 180 degrees. Even in the gloom, I saw the face. It was smooth, devoid of eyes or a nose, featuring only a vertical slit where a mouth should have been. A jagged, pulsing rupture that widened as it began to mimic the sound of a human heartbeat. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. It was the sound of my own pulse, stolen and projected back at me. It took a single step toward me. It didn't walk. It flowed, the limbs folding and unfolding like a spider's. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I simply backed away, my heel catching on the rug, my body collapsing as the world tilted. The creature stopped just inches from my face. The scent of stagnant water and old earth filled my lungs. It leaned down, that pulsing slit hovering over my ear, and whispered in my own mother's voice, the tone perfectly replicated down to the slight rasp of a morning wake-up call. "Drink," it hissed. Then the lights flickered and the kitchen was empty. Absolute silence returned, heavier than before.